Hello and welcome to our lesson on solving formulas for a specified variable. This is going to be from section 1.2 in our textbook. And I think we're going to look at, 3 or 4 examples in this lesson to give you an idea how this works. So the first problem that we're going to start with is problem number 7. And in this problem, we have the formula for the area of a triangle. Area equals 1/2 base times height. They asked me to solve for B. It's going to say solve for B. And so this whole lesson is how to take a formula and manipulate the formula to isolate the indicated variable. All right, so first things first, if you have a fraction involved, you probably want to get rid of that first. So in order to get rid of a half, I need to multiply both sides by 2. And here's why that is. If I take half of 2, that would give me a 1, and then 1 times BH would just be BH. In other words, look at this. The 2's are going to cancel and leave me a 1BH. Okay, so I'm going to have a 2A equals just BH now. Remember, we're trying to solve for B. We got rid of the 1/2. Now we need to get rid of the H. So how is the H attached to the B? Well, it's attached with multiplication. So to get rid of the H, we need to do the opposite operation. We need to divide both sides by H. That'll get the H's to cancel, and that'll get the B by itself. So the final answer, we have B equals 2A over H. And now do you see what our objective is? Whatever letter they want us to solve for, that's the letter we need to isolate. All right, next example, number 19. And here we have AX plus BY equals C. And it says solve for Y. So we're trying to isolate the Y. And before I get started on this one of the things I want to make sure you know is that variables are case sensitive. So any letter that's listed as a capital needs to stay a capital. Any letter that's lowercase, it needs to remain lowercase. Don't interchange those. All right, so what are we solving for? We're solving for Y. So here is the term that has the Y. We need to isolate that term. To do that, we need to take the AX term and bring it over. Okay? So we're going to have BY equals C minus AX. Do you see that AX was understood to be positive? If you bring it over, it will be minus AX. And now do you see that I have the Y term isolated? Now I can get rid of his coefficient. So the B is attached to the Y with multiplication. So I need to divide by B to get rid of it. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So we're going to divide both sides by B. And our final answer is Y equals C minus AX all divided by B. Or there is actually another correct answer here. You could actually take each term and divide by B separately. So, or another correct answer could be C divided by B minus AX divided by B. Either one of these answers would be a solution for Y. And that's it for number 19. let's move on and look at number 27. And here we have D equals R minus RST. And they want me to solve for R. Now, this one's a little bit different because if you look close at what we've got here, we have 1, 2 terms with the variable I'm trying to isolate. So if you have multiple terms that contain that variable, you're going to have to somehow get that down to only one instance of R. Okay? And so this is where we're going to use the 6-letter F word. Do you know what the 6-letter F word is in math? Factor. All right, so we have 1, 2 terms that both have an R. What we're going to do is we're going to factor the R out. We're going to factor out the R. Now, when you factor out, you divide. So what is R divided by R? Anything divided by itself is 1. And if I divide RST by R, the R's will cancel and leave me just ST. Now, do you see how I went from having 2 R's, now I only have 1 R? And if you're not sure how that worked or whether it's right, think about this. If I take this R and distribute, R times 1 is R. R times ST is RST. So if I distribute the R back in, I get back what I had. And so that makes me feel good about the way I factored it out. Okay, so now that I have the R down to a single instance of R, now we can isolate the R. Okay, so look at this. R is being multiplied by everything in the parentheses. And so to get the R by itself, I'm going to have to divide both sides by 1 minus ST. I'm going to divide by everything in the parentheses because that is a factor. Factors are things that are multiplied, and I can divide by common factors. So the 1 minus ST's will cancel. That'll leave the R by itself. And the answer is R equals D divided by 1 minus ST. And that is where we stop because now we have the R by itself. Whew, that was a tough one. I think we probably should look at least one more. And I don't see the one that I want. Okay, so this, I'm going to call this my example. I'm going to make one up. And I remember I like it kind of effed up. So we're going to look at one that's a little fractioned up here. Let's say we have 1 over, I don't know, x equals 1 over y plus 1 over z. Let's say we have this equation and they ask us to solve for y. We want to get the y by itself. And I think in my previous video, I said if you have an equation with fractions involved, you can kill off the fractions if you get all the denominators to match. So what we want to do is we want to give each denominator what it needs so that they all have the same stuff. Okay, so look at the first denominator. He has an x. What he needs is a y and a z. Because the other two have a y and a z, he needs a y and a z. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I'm going to give him a yz. Now, look at the middle fraction. He's got a y. He needs an x and a z. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. And for the last fraction, he's got a z. he needs an x and a y. So we're going to give the numerator an x and a y. Now look at the denominators. XYZ, XYZ. Do you see they all have XYZ? Now you see them. Now you don't. Once the denominators match, you can cancel them out. So what am I left with? I now have YZ equals XZ plus XY. And now I have a new formula with no fractions. It should be a little bit easier to solve for Y. So how many terms have a Y? I've got a YZ, I've got an XY. I need to get those two terms together on the same side. So we're going to bring the XY over. That's going to give me YZ. Remember, if you bring it over, you have to change the sign. Minus XY equals XZ. And now, if you notice, both of the terms that have a Y are on the same side, just like we did in number 27. Now we're going to use the 6-letter F word. That's right, we're going to factor out the Y. So since they have a Y in common, I can factor out the Y. Remember, when you factor out, you're dividing. So here the Y will cancel and leave me a Z. In the next term, the Y will cancel and leave me an X. And now notice I went from having two instances of Y, and now I have a single instance of Y. So it's important that you get that variable that you're trying to solve for down to only one of them, then you can isolate it. And remember, if you're not sure how to get here, if I want to distribute to check and see that I get the original back, you can do that. Distributing the Y is going to give me what I had, so I feel pretty good about the way I have this factored. All right, so now what is attached to the Y? Well, Z minus X is being multiplied by the Y. And so if I want to get the Y by itself, I need to divide by Z minus X on both sides. Here the Z minus X's will cancel, and that will isolate the Y. And my final answer is XZ over Z minus X. And now that is solved for Y. And that's going to do it for this particular lesson. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below, or you can text me. And thanks for watching.